You are watching a Healing Element Podcast special. Show your support by subscribing to the Healing Element Podcast YouTube channel. Also, follow us on Instagram at the Healing Element Podcast. Hello, this is Kai Marie, and welcome to the Healing Element Podcast. This is the part 2 of Return of the Kings, Changing the Game. I have a very special guest with me tonight, Ramnhru. Such a pleasure to have you on the podcast. This is going to be a very educational and healing conversation that we're going to have tonight. And the focus surrounds Black men and life insurance, as far as getting their life insurance policies together, learning how to set up a retirement plan. That creates a great foundation, not only for them, but for if they're having children or family. So this message, as last night's part 1 message, is specifically for Black men. And this is all about what you need to do to make sure that that you're putting together a nice, safe plan for you and maybe eventually your family. So let me introduce Ram. I feel like I met Ram lifetimes ago, but I think we actually connected over this past summer, if I'm not mistaken. But he has been a true blessing to not only me, but also to Dwayne. And we have learned so much from him. So I am so thankful to have him in our lives, and also to have him on this podcast makes it even more special. So thank you, Ram, so much for doing this. Much appreciated. And now to introduce everyone to you, I want to provide a little bit of your background, and you can find Raman's full bio in the description of this video. So he is a registered nurse with over 30 years of nursing experience in the community and correctional setting. He's also a certified holistic practitioner, and he provides wellness. He has provided wellness center care for over 15 years from his home-based business at the Life Spring Rejuvenation Center. He has hosted and presented trauma reduction and wellness programs in his center, and to help mitigate the epigenetic damage of life and the trauma of cultural racism. He is a researcher of African ancient global history, focusing on demystifying and decoding the ancient sacred sites and modern monuments and complexes. He is the host and energy guide of his tour business, Rock of Ages Tours. His tours are of local sacred sites and monuments in the New York Triad area. He is presently developing tours of national and international locations. He is currently writing his first book, The Sacred Geomancy of Manhattan. His most recent focus is an educational estate planning and wealth building video conference series for people of color, denied intergenerational wealth through systematic global racism, which he endearingly calls the Big Payback. Welcome, Ram.
Let me say this to the audience. It is my blessing. It's a blessing to have met Kai and her mate. As she said, it was a connection that we've had as though we've known each other for forever. And you've blessed myself, my wife, with your presence. So I think both of you are two very special human beings that bless us. So it's my blessing.
Oh, thank you so much. And for everyone that's listening, you are going to really be blown away by the information that Ram is going to present, because it is truly life-changing. This is information that he has also shared with me and Dwayne, and it has definitely changed our life as we begin to plan for our future. So we're hoping that the same will be for you. I'm sure the same will be for you as well. Before we go any further in the presentation, we're actually going to do a 3-minute meditation guided by Ram. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it over to him.
Excellent. Before we start, just get nice and comfortable. I want everybody just to take a minute to disconnect from all of the stuff, all of the frequency and all of the stuff. The only other time you experience this is probably when you sleep. So let's just take it three minutes to just silently sit. And the only thing you're going to do is just focus on your breath. And we're starting right now. You can close your eyes if you wish. You can keep them open. Just breathe. Open your eyes. Take a nice deep breath in. And exhale.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Now I have to refocus myself. I kind of went off somewhere. Thank you so much, Ram. So with that being said, we are going to present, or Ram is going to present some wealth building principles. So if you have to grab a pen or paper, please make sure you do that. The other thing that I really appreciate in this presentation is that towards the end, I believe, Ram, you're going to provide some resources for people as well. So that's going to be great. So with that being said, I'm going to share my screen.
Before you do, I'm going to open with a little synaptic version of a story.
Okay. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, in the home that I'm sitting in, there was a gentleman who became my good friend, a good friend. He was the contractor that worked in our home. I've known him for about 15 years. We talk about life, about marriage, about relationships, raising children, what have you. And we talked about estate planning, about wills, life insurance, trusts, and what you would do to actually transfer wealth. About a month ago, I got a call from his wife. She calls me, says, "Oh, he's dead." I'm like, okay. I was taken aback by that. But then after I was taken aback from it, I said, okay, I know his family's good. We discussed the estate planning instruments. We discussed having a will. We discussed life insurance. We discussed having trust. We discussed transferring wealth. The shocking thing his wife told me was that he implemented nothing. He did not have a will. He did not have life insurance. He did not have a trust. What he did have was several properties. What he did have was a situation that when I thought he was married, he was not married for 30 years, had properties, some properties in New York, some properties out of state. And all of that now is left in court, what you call probate. Nothing happens now. And what happened for is going to probably take weeks, probably take months, or probably take years. The fact that he didn't have a will in place, everything stops. The fact that he doesn't have life insurance, the monies that would be part of the inheritance for his family through life insurance, they will not see. The properties that he does have, whatever the tax implications that they may be, all that's now locked in probate court. All of that would have been eliminated by having those instruments in place. He would have effectively transferred all of the energy that he had worked for over the last, I think he was in business for 50 years. That would have effectively been transferred to his family with little or no effort. Now that whole thing is stopped, and is going to take, again, as I said, from months to years for that to be resolved. And even his body, what was going to happen with his body, because a will wasn't in place, no one knew what his wishes were. Even his body was an issue, where his body's going to be taken to and what was going to happen to it. So I'm sharing that as an opening to hopefully give you an overview as to what happens when you don't have those instruments in place. Kai, we can start.
Okay. So I'm going to put the PowerPoint on the screen. Please drop a note in the comments for some reason it's not coming through.
Okay, excellent.
Or you can't hear us.
Excellent.
Just make a note.
That's fine. Thank you. Return of the Kings. Changing. Oh, I saw the moving parts. Yes. Return of the Kings, changing the game. Black men lead, moving from symbolism to power. Why is it important for Black men to get their finances in order? Before I answer this question, Kai, the slide portion, thank you, is coming up again. The 15th century etymological meaning of the word order is to command. When Black men do not have command over their finances, it perpetuates intergenerational financial impotence. Black economic vulnerability is not a mistake. White men who belong to global fraternal orders were directly involved in the systematic intergenerational destruction of the Black family's ability to amass wealth. We, the Black man and Black woman, ascendants of humanity's progenitors, that last portion is slightly blurred. If you can just bring it up a little.
Oh, I don't.
There we go. That last portion, yes. Accumulated wealth, and I'm going to complete the sentence because I can see the rest. We amass wealth in an order that we saw and replicated in the earth as what we saw in the cosmos. Other civilizations have followed us to try to replicate that order, but they have never done it completely. They've done that imperfectly. You can move to the next slide. Within the Black cosmic consciousness, it is obvious that the picture itself, it's about Black and white. The answer is power, the ability to impact the Black family's physical, psychological, and material state of existence. When Black men do not have their finances in order, ransom. When we, Black men of African genetic ancestry, do not have our finances in order, interestingly, the word finance in its old etymological meaning is ransom, as defined by Random House Collegiate Dictionary. That portion came up again. Thank you. The phrase finance, quote, is the redemption of a prisoner, slave, and kidnapped person of captured goods, etc., for a price. When Black men do not have their finances in order, their families become ransom to the larger dominant white society's economic dictates. The Black family becomes economically vulnerable and a prime target for the exploitation of every facet of white American society. Black commodity. America's capitalist monetary system, which used Black people as commodity for 200 years during slavery and with slavery's eventual abolition, denied them full access to America's wealth created by their hands through various iterations of systemic discrimination. Some of the variations of iterations of systemic discrimination: Jim Crow, incarceration. I being one working in the institution, which a lot of people don't know, when slavery is over, the burgeoning industry that was created across America were prisons to deal with all those free Africans when the slave industry system was closed down. Another aspect of discrimination was redlining. When African Americans moved from the South to try to enjoy the spoils of the wealth that was happening in the North, dealing with the war that was happening, collusively, governments and also communities came together to make sure that African Americans were denied access to proper housing in communities in the North. We understand miseducation, police brutality is forever rampant, has been the history for African people going back from its inception and from before slavery. Predatory housing lending, physical terror, and government-sanctioned discriminatory policies. Marketing the commodity. The marketing communications pioneer and advertising Hall of Fame inductee Tom Burrell's book, Brainwash, challenges the myth of Black inferiority. He states, one of the first high-valued brands in America was not an inanimate product. African Americans were turned into inanimate products, slaves, and the brand that the early ruling class literally and figuratively burned onto Black Americans as they did with livestock was the permanent identifier of some human inferiority. Through the various iterations of systemic discrimination, i.e. Jim Crow, incarceration, redlining, miseducation, police brutality, predatory housing lending, physical terror, government-sanctioned discriminatory policies, as outlined in the previous slide, are genuinely relevant to the history of the creation of the massive wealth disparity of Black people and Black families. The wealth gap. The Black and white economic disparity is also known as the wealth gap. The wealth gap, I'm quoting from the Center of American Progress 2018 report entitled How America's Structural Racism Helped to Create the Black-White Wealth Gap. In 2016, the median wealth for Black and Hispanic families was $17,600 and $20,700 respectively, compared with 7 white families whose median wealth was $171,000. Hanks, Solomon, Weller. The median wealth of Black family is 9.2 times less than that of white families. Black economic vulnerability. Black economic vulnerability is a new perpetual form of slavery that lasts for generations. Financial vulnerability is the monumental reason why it is why it is of paramount urgency for Black men to have their finances in order. The psychological warfare. Black men not having their finances in order is a significant consequence of the deep, protracted, unconscious psychological warfare being waged against the Black man's psyche for 2 centuries in America. Injury to the Black man's psyche has direct financial and intergenerational impact on the Black family's physical, psychological, and material existence. The Black man has engaged in a losing battle with bad debt, the financial type, which eventually leads to his permanent physical death in his attempt to regain a sense of self-worth and empowerment through, capricious consumption, physical cost of psychological war. Black man and John Henryism. The term John Henryism was conceived in the 1970s by behavior social scientist and researcher Sherman James. He is a Black epidemiologist and public researcher who follows in the footsteps of Black scientists like Imhotep, Dr. Charles Drew, Carter G. Woodson, to name a few, who looked at disharmony in the balance of life, disease, and applied the principle of Ma'at, balance, to help return their people to wholeness. Amen. John Henryism theory is that as Black men do psychological, physical, and emotional battle to pull themselves up from the ravages of centuries of socioeconomic discrimination and white inferiority, they develop chronic health disorders and reduces their mortality. Black men suffer higher mortality from chronic disease than white males, i.e., high blood pressure, diabetes, heart attacks, etc. This gap widens as Black men get older. The value of money and the power of investing via retirement planning. Money equals power, and investing multiplies it passively. Stocks are soaring, and most Black people are missing out. Nearly half of all U.S. households don't own any stocks, and a disproportionate number of them are from Blacks and other minority households, was the headline of a 2020 ABC News article. Black households are much more likely to be in that non-as fortunate group that isn't in the stock market. Only 35% of Black households own stocks in 2019, according to the data released recently by the Federal Reserve. The differences in stock ownership between white and Black households goes back decades, and they narrowed a bit between 2016 and 2019, the most recent data available from the Federal Reserve. But researchers say the coronavirus pandemic and resulting recession probably widened the gap again. 2007 to 2010, housing market crash devastated the Black family's wealth by more than half. Now, let me just touch on that a minute. You've got Black families that are already economically depressed, already dealing with the ravages of not being fully actualized in the economic environment. You have these predatory lenders that come specifically looking for Black people, that they've done even back to the time of slavery, looking to bleed the life out of Black people. They specifically went looking to find Black homeowners to prey on them. They did that and wiped out half of the wealth of Black people that took them almost a generation or two to create, right? At the research that I was looking at, it basically says it's going to take another 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 generations to recover from what happened with the housing crash in 2010. While white families' wealth grew even during this period. So while African Americans were losing half of their wealth, white families' wealth were growing, because what they were doing, they had their stuff invested, they had savings, they owned real estate, and they had equity in that real estate. So they had a cushion to be able to survive the ravages of what happened with the predatory lending that eventually crashed the stock market. Okay.
And Ram, I just wanted to add to that. So when people in our community hear the issue is you're not working hard enough, that is not true. There's a system that is put in play to create certain type of outcomes. So I just wanted to, I hear a lot of times of, we don't work, you're not working as hard, you got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. But if the government is actively participating in a system that keeps you at a certain level and unable to compete with your white counterparts, then the type of outcomes we see right now, that's what's going to happen. But the thing that's going to be empowering today is that you're going to find out how you can work within this system. So I just wanted to point that out, Ram.
Thank you for that. Oh, yeah, to the next slide, yes. The power of compounding interest. Yes, this is an example of why and how compounding interest is important. The earlier you do that, the more compound, based on time, the more you compound your money, and you build it passively without doing anything. This is an example of three people. One, you have Barney, you have Alice, and you have Christopher. Barney started saving in roughly early 20s. Alice did the same thing. She didn't contribute, but saved a little longer. The difference is that Christopher, he was the one that started saving, but not only that, he continued to regularly make contributions to his savings. And at the end of time, at roughly age 58, he was looking at $1,142,081. Alice was looking at roughly $600,000, and Barney was looking at roughly $500,000. So I use this slide as an illustration to stress to people, one of the most powerful things that you can do with building wealth is to do compounding. The sooner you do that, the earlier you do that, the more you build wealth, the faster you build wealth, and you do it passively. You don't have to do the 3 and 4 and 5 jobs. The job itself will be the stock market doing the work for you passively while you're sleeping, while you're eating, while you're working. There's only 24 hours in a day that you can work. And if you to work 24 hours a day and you have no more time, you have no more time. But the money works for you while you're sleeping. So compounding interest is a very powerful investing tool and a very powerful way to build wealth. Historical barriers of Black male wealth. Jim Crow, again, incarceration, redlining, miseducation, police brutality, predatory house lending, physical terror, governmental sanction, discriminatory policies. What do Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King Jr., Jimi Hendrix, Bob Marley, Barry White, James Brown, Prince, Aretha Franklin, and millions of other Black Americans did? They do and did not have wills. This crucial omission in life planning is the first mechanism when Black men voluntarily relinquish their power. What is the psychology behind this? Half a millennia of psychological trauma, intergenerational epigenetic programming of worthlessness, and the slave master Christian indoctrination of rewards not on earth, but in the afterlife, heaven. Because of this trauma, the majority of Black men do not have wills. This is a major effect of PTSS, post-traumatic slave syndrome. Black men unconsciously deny their own mortality to the detriment of their families. Creating wealth creating a will and testament.
And Ram, I just wanted to say, for those that are listening, to show your support, please give this video a thumbs up, and please also share. If you're watching this on Facebook, please feel free to share this on your Facebook page so that your friends and family can hear this important information. And if you're listening on YouTube, please feel free to share as well. We really want to get this information out to as many people as possible. Again, this is specifically for Black men and so in their families, but for those that are listening, please do share this information. Thanks, Ram.
Thank you, dear. A will is the key that opens or closes the door to a black man's estate. A will and testament. What is a will and testament? A will or testament is a legal document that expresses a person's wishes as to how their property is to be distributed after their death, and as to which person is to manage the property until its final distribution. What happens when black men die without a will? Their estate, which is everything they own in their name, goes into interstate. This is the beginning of the probate process. Probate process is public for everyone who may have an interest, i.e. creditors. For example, if you have no will and you go to probate, if creditors are looking for you, if some disgruntled person, disgruntled family member, someone who doesn't like you, they can go into court because it's public and say, you promised me stuff. You have no way to prove it because you don't have a will. All right. The probate process is public, and anyone who may have an interest, i.e. creditors, etc., can have access to that. When black men die without a will, their assets are frozen until the court system goes through every detail of their estate. The court then applies its state intestacy laws to decide where a person's possession will be allocated. This process can be time consuming and can take several months to years. All costs in probate are recovered from the deceased estate. That amount is roughly anywhere between 3 to 5% of the estate. In almost every state, the man's surviving spouse will get a portion of his assets if he passes away without a will. This will vary somewhat significantly state by state. If he has no surviving wife, his children will inherit his entire estate if not otherwise specified in his will. In the case he has no children, his parents, if still alive, would be in charge of his estate. If no surviving parents, estate would be given to his siblings in equal shares. If he has no children, no spouse, no siblings or descendants of siblings, nieces and nephews, the family on his mother's side and his father's side will split his assets equally. What is probate? Probate is a judicial process whereby a will is proved in a court of law and accepts as a valid public document that it is true last testament of the deceased, or whereby the estate is settled. Selecting a healthcare proxy and power of attorney. What is a healthcare proxy and why do you need it? A healthcare proxy is a legal medical instrument that empowers the person who you choose to, it should be made make medical decisions for you, and if you are ever become medically incapacitated and cannot make medical decisions for yourself. Without it, your medical wishes are unknown and may go against your religious beliefs. Now, for example, I have family members that are of the Jehovah's Witness faith. If that family member passes and no one in the and no will is found, and as far as Jehovah's Witness is concerned, you that as an example, and with no will, that may create a problem for them. All right, so that's just one example. What is a healthcare proxy and why do you need it? I covered that. We can go to the next slide. What is powers of attorney and why do Black people need it? Powers of attorney is a legal instrument that empowers the person he chooses to act in his behalf, in his capacity, with full legal power to make financial decisions for him when and if he even becomes incapacitated and cannot make decisions for himself. Without his powers of attorney, his everyday needs and financial affairs are arrested. And to give a living example, Kai, and to the family, that I had a friend in the family got a phone call at the height of COVID, had a stroke, got a call he had a stroke. There was no will in place, no power of attorney in place. There was nothing that his mate and his wife could do because those instruments are not in place. Then what happens? The hospital now has to make medical decisions on his behalf. And also, if there are any financial issue relating to medical care or that individual existence, by not having those instruments in place, it creates a problem. If you have to pay your mortgage, if you have to pay your utilities, if you have to do anything financially without the powers of attorneys in place, you have a problem. You can go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. Establishing a life insurance policy. Why should Black men establish a life insurance policy? The Black man is the only man except the indigenous man I've ever seen hung on a tree, despite the propaganda of the white Jesus dying on the cross for humanity. It was only in a book. The reality of life on earth in America is that it is the Black man who is the symbolic Messiah, hung on trees or at the terminal end of a gun. It is the Black man body that has been ritually sacrificed for hundreds of years by lynching and other forms of white gang violence. The most recent form of gang violence is the white police, the new slave catcher. If there is any person on this planet who should have a life insurance policy, it is a Black man. More urgently, young Black men. Now, this is a graph of a stat of the likelihood and the risk of being killed by police, and the numbers for African American men, as you can see, is close to 100% that use a Black man from birth to roughly young adulthood. It's roughly a 90% chance that you may not live. For the Native American, it's slightly less, roughly, let's say 60% or so. And it works its way down to white male, and last, the Asian Pacific, are the one who basically doesn't have to worry about. What this stat shows and what this graph shows, if there's any population on the planet who needs to have life insurance, to carry life insurance, it's the Black male that has to carry life insurance. And I'm specifying that because this particular presentation is dealing with Black men, but also Black women need to also have life insurance. Strategies of Black male financial empowerment. What is the most powerful secret never to be told, but transferred intergenerationally by the kings, popes, English nobility, their bastard child America, the ruling elite, old colonialists, founding fathers, Union and Confederate, Republican, Democrat, dead presidents, colonial slave owners, plantation masters, CEOs, members of government, the rich, the wealthy, and the powerful all share in common? Knowledge of wealth building and transfer of wealth. The cornerstones of building wealth. Life insurance, will, trust, investing without an employer, self-employment, voluntary investment through your employer, home ownership, estate planning, civil, criminal, and legal counsel. Just before you move to the slide, Kai, I work in a criminal setting. I can tell you roughly from empirical information that the predominance of people in there, they're in there because they did not have effective or any legal counsel. An immediate life experience for myself, my son, when he was roughly 17, 18 years old to graduate from high school, just coming home, he gets arrested. for doing nothing by a black cop. If we did not have access to an attorney, which was pro bono, if we didn't have access to good legal counsel, and if he did not have the representation of his family, the outcome would have been very different. There are a lot of men and women behind bars for the simple fact that they do not have legal representation. The perspective that I speak from with dealing with wealth building and estate planning for the black family, the criminal attorney, the civil attorney, and the state attorney, those attorneys, they act as the bookend and the cake that deal with protecting your estate. Other individuals talk about estate planning and life building, but they don't think about those components. Those are the individuals who step into the arena that deals with harvesting our people. They're the ones that step in that arena, and they try, and what they try to do, their best is to help you to protect you and to protect your estate. So, recommendation, you should have at your fingers call on your cell phone a number to a civil attorney, a number to a criminal attorney, and number to an estate attorney if that hasn't been yet. But keep those in mind. Those two numbers need to be in your recess. And one last thing, I'm going to close on that. If you ever come in contact with law enforcement, that's how they feed the system. In contact with law enforcement, you say nothing. And the only thing you do, you tell them to contact your attorney. You say nothing. You can, next slide. Okay, thank you. Life insurance. Why life insurance? There are different types. We have term, we have whole. We have health insurance, employers, self-employed, and unemployed insurance. Life insurance. Life insurance term can be used for many functions in estate planning. And based on the estate planning from my estate planning attorney and estate planning counsel, life insurance, particularly term, is one of the fastest ways to amass wealth. Everybody has seen George Floyd. Everybody has seen so many black men whose lives have been snatched and assassinated. And the only thing we see on the other end of the television is a bunch of black folks crying with no monetary compensation. If George Floyd had had a small insurance policy, it didn't have to be much. His family would have received something. Families at the end, when black men's lives are taken, have to go by collecting GoFundMe situation, putting money together to try to take care of our black men that have been killed. And insurance is very, very inexpensive thing to do. And if black men have life insurance, if every black man was to have a life insurance policy, every time a black life was taken, and the establishment is putting out $500,000, they're putting out $1 million, and I'm talking about term insurance, it costs next to nothing. Every time a black man's life was taken and the establishment had to pay out the pocket, I guarantee you they would stop killing black men. One of the most powerful things that you can do as a black man is to make sure that you have life insurance and have as much as you can afford. And if your life is taken, which what happens to black men in this world, at least your family is not going to be left destitute. Your family will have something to fall back on, and your life will not be taken for nothing. Life insurance can provide needed funds for survivors upon the death of the insured, just what I was speaking about earlier. Life insurance can be used to pay estate taxes. One of the strategies that my estate planner that we discussed, life insurance policy does exactly that. It helps to take care of estate taxes at the end of someone's life. So that's another important reason for having life insurance policy. Life insurance can be used to also enhance your estate. Term life insurance. Term life insurance guarantees payment of a stated death benefit to the insured's beneficiaries if the insured person dies during a specific term. How many times we've seen that happen to Black men across America and across the world? How many? How many times? And there's no compensation for that. These policies have no value other than the guaranteed death benefit. You hear this? No other value except the guaranteed death benefit, which means that when you get that term life insurance policy, that if anything happens to that man, it's a guarantee that that family is going to be blessed with the unfortunate death of that Black man. And the feature, and features no saving component as found in whole life insurance product. Term life premiums are based on the person's age, health, and life expectancy. Now, here's a question for the family. When do you think is the best time to have life insurance? When you're older, when you're young? When you're young. So what you should do is to bless our children as opposed to blessing them in some inanimate object. Bless them with a life insurance policy. Let that life insurance policy be the blessing you get them when as soon as you can afford it, as young as you can afford it. The younger you can afford it, the more coverage you get, and the longer you can have it. Let that be the gift that you give for their birthday. Let that be the gift, a life insurance policy. And one of the strategies that I encourage with my own family and people I speak to, once you insure them, have them insure themselves for as much as they can afford. So use a parent, insure them, and they insure themselves. So you have what you call not a double insurance, but you have, if the unfortunate thing happens where they lose their lives, your family is blessed.
I just wanted to add, anyone who's listening, if you have any questions at any point during the presentation, just drop it in the comment and I'll make sure that Ram sees the questions and we can provide any more helpful information to you as you begin to maybe look over your own policies, begin to start having this conversation with your family. So again, any questions you have, just drop them in the comment box.
Thank you. What is life insurance? What is whole life insurance? Whole life insurance provides coverage for the life of the insured. In addition to paying a death benefit, whole life insurance also contains a savings component in which cash value may accumulate. These policies are also known as permanent and traditional life insurance. Now, just one moment, Kai. Traditionally, that was the life insurance that was pushed to Black folks. The whole life insurance policy. We hear about these Gerber policies where, a couple of $1,000s, enough to maybe possibly bury someone, but nothing else outside of that, right? So, and that was specifically targeted to Black communities. You weren't told about you were steered away from the term policies because they knew that term policy had the face value. That's what it was worth. So we were steered away from that. So what you hear me saying in this presentation tonight, look towards term policy. It's another one of those instruments that you have in your estate plan, coupled with the other things that you have as part of your estate plan. Make sure that you also look into term life insurance, because based on our situation in America and how we're taken out, that's the most important form of insurance that you can get to guarantee that we see the returns if our family members have their life taken.
And we do have a question. I think you answered it, Ram, from Baseman Awakens. Is whole life insurance a good option? So with the response that Ram just gave, Baseman, let us know if that kind of answers your question, or if you have a follow-up.
I would say to Baseman Awareness, just in brief, that the two forms of policy are used in an estate plan to structure it properly. So depending on where you are and what your needs are is going to determine which one or which combination of the two you would use in your estate plan. Oh, next slide, Kai. Thank you. Why have health insurance? Health insurance covers essential health benefits critical to maintaining your health and treating illness and accidents. Health insurance protects you from unexpected high medical costs, which they are. As a nurse working in that environment for several years, one of the things I asked the estate attorney, the estate attorney that's in the estate planning circle that you'll be introduced to, I said, what is the thing that will absolutely devastate you financially? And her answer was an illness. An illness will wipe out your estate, and illness will make you destitute. So two things that are very important for you to do as far as estate planning and wealth building, to make sure that you have life insurance and to make sure you have health insurance. Most black men do not know they have an estate until death. That moment is too late. A black man is an estate. He is the cornerstone of wealth building. Now here again, one quick example, Kai, a good friend of mine passed recently during Corona. He said pretty much we all thought he didn't have anything. Come to find out he was worth almost $1 million. When you looked at the accumulated assets that was left by family members, retirement plans, what have you, but he kept saying he didn't have anything. And guess what? He died without a will. All of what's going on with that is now sitting in probate. Knowledge of wealth building. Every black man is an estate. It may be small or it may be large. Financial planning, retirement planning, investment plans, voluntary, mandatory. Retirement planning. There are at least 11 types of retirement investment plans. There are more, but these are just a few. You have Roth IRAs, you have 401k plans, you have 403b plans, you have simple IRA plans, you have SEP plans, you have SAR-SEP plans, you have payroll deduction IRAs, you have profit sharing plans, defined benefit plans, money purchase plans, employee stock ownership plans, government plans 457. I'm just going to stop for a minute. The government has set up an investment plan for employees. The government has set up an investment plan for employees. How many people actually access them? Very few. Roughly, they were saying about maybe 20% to about 30% of African Americans actually enroll in retirement plans. That's where your wealth building is. That's the heart of where you build your wealth. It's in there. It's there for you. I had an example with a friend who worked as a nurse, a female nurse, for 40 years. No one ever told her that they had these. She went to retirement after 40 years of work as a nurse. And guess what? She had nothing because no one told her they had this. From the moment you start your employment, if you start this, I guarantee you that you will be a millionaire if you start this. But a lot of people don't know this. They don't see this. It's not something that's readily discussed. This is where the wealth building is, and the government has set it up for you. You can go to the next slide. Roth IRAs, an individual retirement account or an IRA, is a type of tax advance account that you can use to save for retirement outside of a workplace plan. 401k plans. A 401 is a feature of a qualified profit sharing plan that allows employees to contribute a portion of their wages to individual accounts. 403b plans, a plan also called a tax sheltered annuity or TSA plan, is a retirement plan offered by public schools and certain 501c3 tax exempt organizations. Employees save for retirement by contributing to individual accounts. Employees can also contribute to employees' accounts. Simple IRA plans allow employees and employers to contribute traditional IRAs set up for employees. It is ideally suited as a startup retirement savings plan for small employers not currently sponsoring a retirement plan. Now, just want to stop a minute. There are these plans, and in these plans, they have these investment instruments, and IRA being one of them, right? They're set up for you. The investment vehicles are there for you. In these investment vehicles, they're not as risky because they're in these blended plans, not like in the stock market. You have a stock market in your employment structure that's right there for you to build wealth. These are the instruments that are there. They need to be accessed as early as you can access them, and by contributing to them with compounding, you will assure your retirement. You will build wealth. If you don't access them, based on the length of time that you take to start to fund them, you will reduce the amount of time that you have to compound and to amass wealth. Compounding interest. That was a segue. Compound interest puts your money to work and grows larger as it feeds on itself. The rule of 72 dictates that in order to obtain a rough estimate of how many years it will take for your initial investment to duplicate itself, you should divide that initial investment by 72. This is a snapshot of a compounding interest example. An individual has an initial investment of $500 with a monthly contribution of $150. The length of time, roughly the length of a person's working life, with an estimated interest rate of about 12.25%, which is what the stock market has done roughly for the last 60 years or so, and an interest rate variation of about 15, compounding frequency annually. Next slide, Kai. That individual at age 40 will have $1,530,966.88 as an example. Wealth building financial benefits of home ownership. Home ownership. Government subsidized home ownership in ways not available to other forms of wealth building, i.e. investing. So what that's basically saying is that the government subsidizes your house purchase, and in that house purchase, it's another way of you investing, that you see the results of that investing when you do eventually either pass that house on to your heirs, where they see the equity in that, or when you do eventually sell the house. So the investment is in the house itself. Homeowners can deduct the tax. It should be the tax and property tax from their income. Homeowners don't pay tax on capital gains, which is the growth value that you get as the house itself grows in time. The money that the house grows and it makes over time, you don't pay any taxes, any capital gains taxes. So that means that if you purchase a house and you leave it for your heirs, they get the benefit of that and don't have to pay any taxes. And that's the investment component that's in home ownership. When Black men buy homes, they are increasing the future wealth of their families. When a Black man plans his estate, he's planting the seed for the intergenerational wealth transfer of his financial legacy and creating a strategy for closing the wealth gap. Why have an estate plan? Transfer of wealth to your heirs in a tax-efficient manner, protect your family and business, carry out charitable wishes, to have privacy. Anyone can access information from the probate court. For example, relatives, Creditors, get your probate records and challenge your will. Now, Kai just got to wait a minute on that one. Just want to say something on that. When you don't have a will, anybody can come and say, you promised me something. There's no way to prove it. And by not proving that, the court now has to spend the time and the money, and the attorneys are waiting to drag that out. The longer they drag it out, they make money to figure out what your wishes are by not having a will. One of the most important things that you can do as part of your estate plan is to have a will. And by having a will, your wishes are known. When your wishes are known, no one can come and contest it. They can contest it, but it's there in black and white. So what is there to do? They move on with the probate, right? Living example in my family. Had a relative who passed, had a will here, had a will there. We didn't know which one. One family member saying, oh, they promised me something. The other family member saying they promised me something, right? The fact that he did have a will, the individual had a will, it was able to resolve that. No matter what the contestation was coming from the family that was there. What a will does, it helps to alleviate the further trauma that we go through as a people. The trauma that we go through intergenerationally, what it does, it helps to relieve that because the individual wishes are known. Whatever that family member here, whatever, it's neither here nor there. It's there in black and white, and it helps to reduce the further trauma that we experience. The 4 must-have estate planning instruments. Last will and testament. A last will and testament, among other things, allows you to name who you want to receive your estate upon your death. Financial and healthcare power of attorneys. A durable power of attorney allows you to appoint an agent to act on your behalf if you are unable to act for yourself. Living will. A living will or advance directive allows you to instruct in writing what type of medical treatment you wish to receive if you are terminally ill or in an irreversible coma or persistent vegetative state. I can say, as a nurse working in nursing for a little bit, I've had the experience where that has happened, where that information was not readily available. It's a very arduous situation where the person who's there, who's in need, that person who's the patient, and we've got family members trying to figure out what to do medically. One family member saying, oh, they want it, the other family saying they don't, and it becomes a very difficult situation. Okay. And where was I? Yes, a living trust. A living trust is a legal contract entered into between a person who establishes the trust, the settlor, and the person who manages the trust assets, the trustee, on the behalf of the trust beneficiaries. Now, one example. My mother, she's in her early 80s. We established a trust for her. And the reason for doing that was that the amount that she has in her assets, they're roughly more than what the minimum requirement is. And because she is surpassed that minimum requirement, she would not have access to, I get them confused, Medicare, Medicaid. Even as a nurse, I get them confused. So by structuring a trust, what we have done is to effectively allow her to get whatever benefit she's paid into effectively. Wealthy people do that. We don't do that. I had an example that the estate attorney, when we were having conversation one time, she told me that in the African American community, that Black people who've had homes, who did not have trusts to be able to effectively transfer wealth to the family members, they would have to put a lien in that property, and that property, the value of that property had to be spent down to zero. Imagine a family members, a Black families working their entire lives, and they get to the portion in the end of their life where not having that instrument in place, They have to spend down their entire assets to be able to get care. It's unconscionable. That happens more frequently in African American communities, and a lot of these nursing homes that we don't own, the wealth that they accumulate, that wealth is accumulated by that simple thing, by us not having that instrument in place, a living trust. The two most powerful strategies of growing wealth is, oh, it should be time and strategy. It was covered by the picture. You can go to the next slide. As we see the potential for creating great wealth for our future, remember, keeping it safe in your bank account is not going to achieve this goal. This is achieved by investing like the 1%ers do via investment accounts. You already have an investment account. Your employer retirement account is your investment account. You don't have to now, you don't have to do it outside of the job. You can to supplement your investing, but you already have an investment account from your employer, right? So it's already there. And what you do and what I do, I have my employer investment account and I have my external account. So you have both streams happening. And for those who don't do both streams, you have an investment account that's offered through your job. The way you start building wealth is to access those accounts. The sooner you access them, the sooner you start compounding, the sooner you start building wealth. It's there right at your fingertips. Next slide. Thank you. Strategy, diversification. Is spreading your risk across different types of investments. The goal being to increase your odds of investment success. It's like saying, since no one can know for certain who's going to win this race, let's bet on everyone. Diversification is important in investing because markets can be volatile and unpredictable. Legal counsel. Legal counsel and representation. Why? For the protection of the Black man and his estate. As I had said earlier, you as a Black man, doesn't matter the education, doesn't matter your proficiency, doesn't matter what you're doing. As my son did, he was going home and he walked into a police officer. His life was going to be very different. You have to protect your estate, and how you protect your estate, you make sure you have a criminal attorney at your beckon. You have an estate attorney to help you structure your estate, and you have a civil attorney in any issues that you may need to deal with. You have them there. That's what they're there for. They're there to protect your estate, to make sure that you effectively take that estate that you've spent building to then transfer that to your heirs. The reason for having counsel is representation, both criminal and civil. I can say again, as I said earlier, I work in a correctional setting. If I didn't mention it before, I do. And there are a lot of people in there because they didn't have legal representation and good legal representation. And I can tell you, one who bore witness when my son was dealing with the court system, I couldn't believe one who was even working in a correctional setting. The number of young Black men and women who stepped into court and took plea deals. Bear witness to a sitting Supreme Court judge in the Bronx who I had a brief conversation with. You know what he told me? 90% of those cases, they really can't get you. The reason why they have a 90% conviction rate because people take plea deals. The reason why they take the plea deals because they don't have the right representation to allow them have them negotiate the system to make sure that they protect their estates. You are an estate. We are estates. The moment that slavery was over, we became an estate. We have to protect our estates. We are a state. The black man is an estate. We have to protect the estate. Oh, African Americans suffer worse legal outcomes in civil cases. We know the history and the reasons behind that. Anything you say will be held against you for your prosecution. I do, in part of the presentation that I have, there's a gentleman who says, and the police officer who's going to be my son's witness in his defense, he clearly said, if you ever stop, you say nothing. The moment you start talking, that evidence will be held against you. You say nothing. Call your attorney. Illegal search and seizure and false arrests. You know how that goes. You need legal representation. The 3 pillars of the pyramid of wealth: home ownership, property, land. That other one, marriage, it was skewed in the slide, and education. These are the cornerstones of reclaiming and building black male wealth and transferring it to their heirs. This is why it is important for black men to get their finances in order. And Kai, I think that it should be the end of the slide presentation. Oh,
yes, it is.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Ram, for that, for the presentation. A lot of excellent information to help us to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for our families and to pass on, have the ability to pass on wealth that we accumulate to the next generation. I think they're saying right now there is this huge wealth transfer that is taking place.
Yes.
And, you know, and we all know how we're faring that. Yep.
Yeah, and guess we're missing out. We're missing out by not having these things in place. And if there's nothing else I could say to the family that you should have in place: a will, life insurance, those 2 things. And the other component is the investment component. I encourage the family to encourage their children to start from young. I'll use myself as an example. As soon as my children were born, I started a small investment fund for them, $50, and I did it every month. And when they turn 18 or so, here's your money to do whatever you need to do. You need to use some of it for school or whatever you need to do. So as soon as our children are born, it's a recommendation. This is just me personally speaking, to start an investment plan. It doesn't have to be much, $25, $50. You do that every month. But what happens, the compounded interest over time grows that money into a nice little nest egg that you can give to your child as an inheritance gift.
Well, and so again, if anyone has any questions, because we're starting to come to the end of our virtual event this evening or presentation, so please just drop any questions that you have. And so, Ram, if people are looking for resources as far as where do they even start, is that something that we can share?
Yes. The resource, for those that are in the New York tri-state area, is it something you can post later for them, or it has to be done now?
Yeah, we can post it later. That's no problem.
So what I'll do, I'll have Marie post that information later so the family has it. And the contact people that I will submit would be an estate attorney that works in the New York area, because that's where I am. The contact information for a financial advisor and estate planner, and the contact information for a criminal attorney, contact information for a civil attorney.
Thank you so much. So we'll make sure that information is posted. Ram, as you've been giving these educational presentations, the feedback that you received, have you heard like a common theme as to why our community, I know that you spoke about trauma, but have you, as far as you meeting with Black men and their families, is there like a common theme that you've seen as to why they're not having these conversations? Is anything surrounding fear, or is it just kind of we haven't got around to it?
The most common feedback that I get, conceptually they don't get it. They don't understand the importance of it. And I can only reflect back on understanding the level of trauma that we've been through as a people. If you're dealing, with just surviving, how you hustling to get your survival on, you're not thinking about, dying. You're not thinking about passing money on. You're not thinking about, trying to save, invest it. You're not thinking about that. So the only time that you really get any response and where you understand where we get the sense of urgency of why this is so necessary is when something tragic happens. I was just off the phone early before with one of my clients who was telling me that she got it, after the contractor who I mentioned earlier, who did work for me, I referred him to her. She said, I got it. He died. I got it. I don't have my will in place. I don't have my trust in place. I don't have life insurance in place. I get it. So it's unfortunate that based on the trauma, we have to wait until something traumatic happens to us for us to be able to understand the importance of having these wealth building, estate planning components in place.
Perfectly said. Thank you, Ram. And so for those that are listening, I want to thank you for joining if you joined for part 1 and part 2 of the Return of the Kings. I hope that you were able to get some good food, some good information out of it. And hopefully this information, obviously helpful to your family, but most importantly to you, that you've received some transformational information for your own life. That's what the whole Return of the Kings is about. It's about providing a space for Black men to receive the information that can help them on their journey to become the best version of themselves. So this was the first Return of the Kings for 2021. There will be another one later in the year, so hopefully that you'll come back for that. Again, please make sure you give this video a thumbs up. Please also share and subscribe to the Healing Element podcast. By doing these type of engagement, it helps this type of content, and it helps to push this information further out so that more people in our community can have access to it. So Ram, as we close out this evening, are there any words that you would like to leave with the family?
Will, life insurance, trust, and also to take very seriously the access that you have to building wealth through your employer. If you are employed through an employer, if you are self-employed, take very seriously planning strategies for investing for your retirement and wealth building.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ram, for coming on the platform. It was such an honor, such a privilege. I can't even speak now. I'm all tongue-tied. It was so great to have you on. Those that are watching, thanks again for your support, and please do share this information. And I will be on again live, I think, next Wednesday. Next Wednesday at 8 p.m. I will actually have a panel of about 4 Black women who worked in corporate America, and they will be talking about their experiences of dealing with racial trauma in the workplace and how they were able to overcome that. So please make sure you tune into that, because we want to unpack the trauma, but also provide solutions. So please tune into that. That's, I think it's 8:30. On Wednesday. So please make sure you watch that. And with that being said, I hope you all have a great night. Ram, thanks again for joining the platform. And just hold on for 1 second. We'll close off in the green room. Everyone else, have a great night.